Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the SEAKers Podcast. This is kind of a special one because we've got some guests in, and we're going to be talking about that recent big flooding event. I know I'm excited to learn about this because as a meteorologist, once the rain hits the ground, then I kind of follow it. But more or less, I just lean on Aaron, like, okay, what's going to happen now? Because I don't know what happens in a basin. So I'm excited to hear about what these guys have got to talk about the Mendenhall Flooding event and, everything that happened in Suicide Basin and all of that. It's going to be really fun. So for starters, let's start with Aaron here.
Yeah, so my name's Aaron Jacobs. I'm the senior service hydrologist for the weather service here.
Yeah. And then Aaron.
And I'm Aaron Hood. I'm a professor of environmental science at University of Alaska Southeast.
Okay. Jamie.
I'm Jamie Pierce. I'm a hydrologic technician with the USGS in the Juneau field office.
Okay, so represented here we got USGS, university, and then the weather service here. And I want to emphasize that this is kind of just a big event that had a lot of people involved. And so this isn't just the National Weather Service. This is multiple groups coming together to understand what happened and make it better so the future goes a little smoother. So
yeah, Grant. So Jamie, Aaron, and I have all been together working on this problem since the beginning when it first became a problem in 2011. So we're really invested in knowing more about this and trying to get better information.
Yeah. So let's start with what happened, because I was working all last week and there wasn't a whole lot of rain. So as far as my job was concerned, I was forecasting clear skies and dry skies and nice temperatures. And then all of a sudden the river started to go up. That's where you guys come in. What happened there? It wasn't a meteorological event.
No. So maybe we'll take a couple, like a week backward.
Yeah.
And so we have this monitoring program, and we have USGS has a nice camera up in the basin, so we're able to monitor the rises and falls of the ice in the basin. And so it was a week prior to the flooding event. We saw on the cameras that it reached its top. It reached the top of the Mendenhall Glacier and it started flowing down the side channel. And then by Sunday, we started seeing a little drop in the water, in the ice level. And we're like, oh, something's going on. So Weather Service, we issued a flood watch to let everyone know that something was going on in the basin. We were monitoring it. And more about like Tuesday of that week, we kind of realized, like, okay, it's just the side channel incising, it's not going down. And we kept the watch up for a little bit because in the past it has gone over the top of the glacier, but only about a week long. So it could have gone at any time. So we dropped the flood watch, but we were continuing to monitor it. And by Thursday night, Friday morning, all of a sudden on the USGS lake gauge, we started seeing a rise. And then we knew that the event was pretty much going, and Suicide Basin started draining. And the cameras later on verified that on Friday. And we put out a flood warning, and then that activated Aaron and Jamie to start looking closer at the basin. And Jamie, what'd you do by Saturday?
Saturday we'd started to develop a plan to get out and measure, which is during flood events. I mean, we measure throughout the year. It's what we do to maintain our rating gauges. So we have a gauge on Mendenhall, and that is our measurement control. We started to make a plan for the flooding. We saw it going up, and so those events are really important to us that we capture those, and we capture them as accurately as we can. And so the means in which we do that is we use a lot of different tools to measure that. So we'll get gauge height out of the lake, which then we go on the river itself, and we measure with different instruments. In this case, we use a bridge crane and literally just start doing cross sections back and forth. And in this case, we had to kind of rapidly do it because stage was increasing. At first, I did some back, and I thought it was nearly a foot, but I think it was about a half foot an hour. It was rising, and so Randy Host and I, we kind of, when we showed up, we just kind of knew that we were in for kind of a special event. And not only that, just kind of looking at the channel, by virtue of just how much we're in there and measuring throughout the year, you kind of get a feel for the channel and its flow characteristics, and this one was unique in that it's not only was it bank full so soon, but it was also, the velocity was unlike anything we had seen in that channel, and it also, that velocity was kind of toned down by there's some changes upstream and stuff like that, but it's a fairly stable channel, and so that's what we did. We made a bunch of measurements that day, and then we got to a point where we just couldn't make them anymore, and then we laid them in the rating, and the very first one we did, it came pretty close. We were pretty happy with that, and then we did some follow-up subsequent ones, and then we did another one post-event that really kind of is one of the most important ones, in that it kind of helps define like where the actual channel ended up post-event, because it changed pretty dramatically upstream, and so that's what we did, and so we maintained that rating in the background so that we could basically estimate volume and things like that.
So while the flooding was going on, you were actively taking measurements.
Absolutely, yeah. We're in the water. Yeah. We have so we can do that one of many different ways. It is, the Mendenhall a little bit unique. We've been there for many years, so it's a very stable river for us, in the sense that it doesn't shift a lot. Once we get measurements, it's fairly stable on the rating, and we get in there and we do it at a frequency that allows us to feel pretty confident about our rating and so on and so forth. In Mendenhall's case, it's a little bit different because the lake kind of serves as our control as well, our measurement control, and then we have a lake outlet. And the lake outlet down is really kind of like our focus in terms of the work that we do. So now we'll go in and to make sure that we feel good about our numbers, we'll go in and we'll run up some various models and things like that, and just kind of confirm our work, because that's pretty important.
So you were working before the event happened,
Yeah.
during the event, and then now you've got your work cut out for
now
you going
we're really
forward
good
and
at it,
just refiguring out what the river looks like.
Yeah, because our rating only goes so high. We have a high point and a low point, and that whole, when it starts, looks like it's going to extend, and then we have to draw that rating higher. And it's kind of predicated on where a lot of all the other previous measurements were. It's kind of a best fit through all those the recent measurements, as close to the channel as we can. But after the fact, a lot of the work, really does begin with respects to our work. It's really just to kind of reference and kind of truth what we actually publish with respects to discharge. So, so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So Jamie does that type of work with the USGS, and then on that day I was on the bridge talking to Aaron, and we were also amazed of how much water was coming out so early in the event. Typically, we've seen a lot of these events, a lot of different types of events. Suicide Basin definitely throws a lot of curveballs. Sometimes it acts one way, and then another year it acts another way. So this one definitely seemed different, where it was, as Jamie and his observation noted, it was like raising at such a high rate so early in the flood for how full we knew the basin was. Like, we knew that there was still a lot of water left, and seeing that rise at a half foot. I remember on the bridge, you and I, Aaron, were just amazed and just flabbergasted a little bit of like how much was coming out.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest concern for me, is the rate of increase was much more dramatic than what we've seen in the past, and you could see that in the Weather Service forecast, that we were sort of going to the left of the curve, and you think, it's going up faster than what we've seen in the past. And so that started to get to the question of what's going on. Was the mechanism of the release different, that it allows water to drain out of the basin more quickly? Or perhaps is there more water stored in the basin than we were thinking beforehand? And in the end, it appears to be some combination of those two factors together, where there was more water up there than we had reason to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it also drained for a variety of potential reasons more rapidly than we've seen that occur in the past.
So we had more water than you thought was in the basin, and it came out faster than you thought, and that caused for just a lot of water, a lot of force to move down the lake into the river. And
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's really important for people to understand is that the lake system up there, the way that the basin fills, it's super dynamic, and so there's a lot of ice in there, and changes in that ice between years have a big impact on the volume of water that can hold. It's not like this bowl that fills up and we know it's about the same every year. It's can change dramatically year to year, and it's not necessarily possible to monitor those changes in real time. A lot of the information we have about how the basin is evolving is from going in both before the flood to image it using drones when it's full, and then going back there right after the flood to re-image it using drones. And basically we just take more than 1,000 photos from a drone, we stitch them together, and we're able to create a 3D elevation model. And at that point we can look at it and say, oh wow, look how different it looks from last year. But when it's full in real time, you can't get that imagery, right? It's sort of a post hoc thing. And so we've done that in this case, and the biggest finding was, yes, the basin is a lot different than it has been in the past. It's really evolving relatively rapidly.
yeah, and so you're doing a lot of studying on the basin itself. You mentioned you go up there and you take thousands some odd photos, and so you're actively just making a model of it, and you're doing that before and after, and just try to get a full idea of what's going on in the basin. And so once we have a better understanding of that, then the next year might have a better understanding of how much water is in there to maybe try and better predict
The other piece of that is it doesn't drain all the way all the time, and that is the real hard part for us to measure and to be able to forecast in enough time that people would need to take appropriate action at those higher levels. Now the ante with this event just went up immensely on the just the possibilities of outcomes that we can see from the basin and how much water can come out at one time. But that is one factor that we're going to really look into. But it's just how much water comes out at one time is a hard thing to measure and to predict. But that's something that we're going to try to see what we can do.
Because the low, like we really haven't, as a group, worked out the low elevations in the basin yet. And that really, it does, where that ends up being, it kind of can then speak to some of the drainage mechanisms as well. This year, it really went low.
Really low.
The image that Aaron sent, I was just literally, because when Aaron and I first started going in there, the very first time we walked in there, on the bench that we utilize as it's kind of a working bench, and it makes way up to our array of sensors in there. There was ice on the actual elevator. It was pretty much ice right in front of us, we were even with it, okay? And so to see that now, and then understand the basin, and just to see how deep it's gone, knowing that it emptied, it maybe speaks to sort of a deeper, mechanism that was in play in the past. But I think Aaron's absolutely right. It's changing so fast. I think year to year, some things are probably left over from year to year, but I think the glacier is moving at a fairly fast rate, and damming things up at a little bit faster rate possibly. And I think those are some of the things that we're going to look at here in the future. But
and I think it's important also to understand that even if we knew the exact volume of water that was stored in the basin, because the mechanism through which it drains has some year-to-year variability, we can't even exactly predict the timing and the magnitude of the flood, because as Aaron pointed out, in some years if you know the volume, it might only drain halfway, and then the drainage largely stops, and then it sort of leaks out over time. And so for the same volume, you can get different flood curves. And this is totally different from a rainfall-driven flood, right? If you have the same amount of rainfall year to year, you can predict, oh, we'll probably have about the same level of flooding. With glacier outburst floods, because the mechanisms are complex and change year to year, even if you have a perfect understanding of the amount of water involved, you can't perfectly predict what's going to happen because the water is draining under a glacier, it's lifting up and draining underneath it, and the way that it interacts with the existing drainage channel and the way that the drainage channel evolves during the flood is variable between years, and so it makes it inherently extremely unpredictable.
That's on one hand, that's just like exciting because there's so many variables that we can't know and we can't ever will know, but that all adds up to we just do our best to try to figure out what's going on in there to make the better prediction. And this particular event, it kind of sounds like it was very full and it emptied very quickly, and all of that added up to the big flooding event. Is that like a simplistic way to think of it?
And the amount of water.
And the amount
of water. You know, you put those three things together. It was those variables, and I think we can have we can learn from this event to be able to maybe find tools while we're in the event to see. In real time of like, okay, this is the range of potentials if it's a full basin, and then as we're in the event we see those rate of rises, maybe they start to fall, and we can see potentially where we're at within the event, that hopefully we could give a little bit more lead time on the potential. But even still, that is very difficult to do, but that's some things that we're trying to do to find some type of way to be able to give people some information so they know what action needs to be taken, because it is, again, really hard. It's really unpredictable, like Aaron was saying, but at the same time we need to be able to try to find ways to give people
we're getting
because
close.
of the
we're getting close. You know, it's like everyone's
possibilities.
bringing a line, more to the kind of table, and we are, I think that there's, as we get into start doing radars, doing more Jason Amundsen did a bunch of seismic work. So the plumbing is I think it's a big challenge. I mean, we're talking about like you can't see what's going on, so you can only speculate. But in this case, it's like, as we really learn more and more about this, I mean, it's just amazing what we have learned in this basin. It's just been unbelievable. The other thing is that, the lake was at, an average summer elevation was 5.5, kind of maintained that, you'll see the hydrograph will, bump a little bit from rain events and so on. And oftentimes even those rain events, the intensity, you look at the recent curve, it's like it curves. I mean, it like takes on a real issue. So we can weed those out. But, it had that lake stage been, a foot or two higher, with a rain event on top of it, we could have seen, it could have gone even way past, further than it actually did,
That's a good point, Jamie, in that we do have these inundation maps for us at those reasons, and we're going to be looking at those closely to see about how accurate and how we can improve those. But luckily we were in the situation where we were in this past weekend. But yeah, there's definitely things.
And downstream with high tide.
If it was a bigger high tide, it was a high tide of 17 foot that day.
Like how would the air, it's like these things always kind of become questions, so, yeah. But,
yeah, and I think one silver lining from this, to circle back a bit, is that a lot of the forecasting that was being done was based on what happened in past floods.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had never seen something like this in the past, that made it more difficult to predict this. And so now that we have this, what in our record is sort of an outlier event, we have, it'll give us a better range to understand what can happen in terms of being able to forecast in the future. Because obviously the way that the basin is evolving, we can see clearly that there is the potential to have large events similar to what we saw this year in the future.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The way the Weather Service puts together those hydrologic forecasts is really based on historical information, especially on events like this. That's all that we really have. It's not like on a rainfall input or anything. So the only thing that we really have are these previous events, and it definitely exceeded our expectations and all of our expectations by a long time. So, but it's just now another data point. We're going to use it, we're going to learn from it, and hopefully we'll be able to improve those forecasts. But yeah, it's just so the audience does know, like we can only do as good as what information we had for previous events on these things. And and now we have this data.
Yeah, I mean, even with like all the tools, even if we had all the greatest tools in place, nothing would have changed the outcome of the flood. It would have given us maybe a little bit more better understanding of the actual magnitude potential. But with respects to actual like
individual,
because it's a hard place to censor. It's a hard place to string in gear. It's hemmed in by tight, steep, very rugged terrain that's evolving rapidly. In fact, it's like the evolution of just the lower Mendenhall in and of itself is that left side is undergoing big change, both from a geologic, constantly you see rock slides constantly coming in there. The glacier is pulling away, and with that, it's turning up rock and so on and so forth. So it's undergoing a lot of change. So kind of evolving with that, is important with that instrumentation, and we've learned a lot. We've tried some things. It's not an easy place to keep things alive with respects to actual stage elevation. For instance, in the past, we've strung a transducer all the way from the bottom to be able to get head pressure above, so we can get our height above, and it's just, we're up against some big challenges there, notably ice. Ice floats and it migrates over, and then when it discharges, it cuts things, and it's a challenging place. So, we're trying to work through all those issues.
That's a good point, Jamie, where even if it is a really hard, harsh environment to measure, it is one of the easiest glacier dam outburst to access and to measure in the world. Literally. Like having the amount of what we're doing here is not very easily done across the world.
No.
And so we are providing as much information to the scientific community on a worldly stage because of our access to it. And we all know how dangerous it is for other places across the globe, and being able to have it in our backyard to be able to measure and study it and to improve on our understanding. We saw Suicide Basin did something that was never done before, that was measured on a outburst, so having a double peak. We had I can't recall what year it was, but we had a double peak. But if you put those two hydrographs together, it would have been near the record of 2016.
It's absolutely right. Yeah, that was it. And that spoke to closure. I can only imagine closure mechanisms. So it's like it shifted, and it's where it was draining to maybe a deeper one, or and so it does. Because if you look at these curves and you look at the top of the curve, they all have similar characteristics in an outburst flood. It's precipitous, real fast rise, and a real the descending limit just plummets. Well, like you look at, so we have gauges on rivers all throughout Southeast Alaska. Salmon Hyder, that river just had a big outburst event. It came sooner in July, and you look at the top of that curve, the closure mechanism, it's got the very similar characteristics of very rapid ascending rising limb on the hydrograph, and then it just literally, it's like the valve is shut off, and it's like there's no more water, and it just plunges. And it's really interesting because that's truly speaking to, Aaron mentioned them a little bit, subglacial conduits, where you'll start to get a little water that goes into an ice conduit, presumably, or at some interface. It could be the ice rock interface, but nonetheless, the glacier is yielding to the pressure from the water because it's denser, and so it causes it to go buoyant, or or a part of it to go buoyant, correct me if I'm not wrong. And so it's that slight shift, and you've got an enormous amount of potential energy now harnessed by just the virtue of that amount of water, and it'll start flowing, and it's generating simultaneously heat. and that heat is expanding those conduits. And the physics that and Professor John Nye described this really well years ago, a glaciologist, the Nye theory of the expanding conduits, and they expand, but then they also close. So they expand and then rapidly, because then the yielding it's coming from directly from the ice and no longer the water. So it literally reseals itself, okay? And you can see that in that curve. So it really does kind of speak, it's some of the little nuances that, we kind of collectively kind of add to our checklist of understanding,
And it sounds like you mentioned salmon hider, so you're learning potentially how Suicide Basin and Mendenhall Glacier works by studying other areas.
Look at other items,
You're looking
probably
at a lot of places.
too much, but salmon hiders, it's a chance because we have sensors down there. There's downstream implications as well, not quite like Juneau, but it's a steep run, just like Mendenhall, just like Suicide Basin. It's not the distance from where that lake fills to where it descends into the lake is not a long distance. It's got a steep slope.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
So it comes out. While you look at it, if you just do a simple plot, there's quite a bit of elevation she's dropping. So that's picking up energy, and then you add that just the amount of pressure from that headspace above, and convert that into energy, and you can kind of then see some of these mechanisms that are eroding that, the bottom there.
Well, to kind of finish up here, we learned a lot about what you guys are doing to learn about all this. Is there anything that the general public can do to help with understanding this stuff? Is it just as simple as during flooding events, provide video and pictures? Is it as simple as that, or is there anything that can be done by just the general public?
High water marks.
High water
maybe?
marks are
High water
great.
marks, yeah, they're
Taking
all-
pictures of those are always good during flooding events of getting how high the water got on their property, how deep the water got. Flagging at different times, especially if it's coming up fast. We did learn a lot in this event that we didn't know before, especially on the impacts downstream of Back Loop Bridge. We had an idea of what those impacts could be at these high levels on the Mendenhall, and so now we know. So then hopefully when we have if we have a better understanding of the whole system, to be able to put a higher confidence, even like a higher confidence range of forecasts. The Weather Service is looking into not trying to give just one simplistic single value forecast with these events. We're maybe try to see about a range of values, but we're definitely going to work with the USGS and the university and our other partners to see what's the best way to do that. But for the general public, is also just heed to our information, what we do know, and understand what we don't know and what we're trying to understand too.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming and sharing what you know. I know I learned a lot. I'm on the meteorology side of things. So, like I said earlier on, when stuff like this happens, I just go, Aaron, help me.
Funny, we do too.
So thanks for coming on and helping us learn a little bit. And as always, you can send in questions. If you have questions for these guys, we can easily take them and pass them on and send them back to you at juno.weather@noaa.gov. That's the email. Just put in and then the subject line Weather Seekers Podcast, and we can pass that on to those guys. Or if you have any other questions you want us to ask, feel free to send them in.
Great. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.